Hey everyone, welcome back to Truth, Lies, and Shenanigans. My name is Neo. Tonight we have East,
Good evening, everybody. Thank you for showing up.
and we have the lady of the house, Lizzie.
Lizzie, what's up? Happy Wednesday, everyone. Hope everyone is safe, sound, surviving the COVID, surviving the protests, ready to keep our hands up. Woo, woo.
All right, so what is Truth, Lies, and Shenanigans all about? So we share our truth with you, call out all those lies, and point out the shenanigans going on. And we try to have some fun with some shenanigans of our own. Now we have a great show ahead. We're talking defund the police, Billy Porter, Kaepernick, coronavirus, home remedies, and much, much more. Uh, and a lot of these topics actually come from you guys, so it should be a lot of fun. Now, keep in mind, we insist on doing our show live because we want to talk with you, not just to you. But also, make sure you join in the conversation. If you're watching on Facebook, YouTube, leave comments in the comment section. Hit us up on Twitter at TLS Live Show. Your comments and questions will display in the live screen, or live on the screen above, and we'll call a few good ones if we receive some. Reminder, if you're in one of those Facebook watch parties, for us to see your comments, you'll have to leave that and just join the live feed on our page. All right. So we have one rule, and East, tell everyone what that rule is.
All right, that one rule that we have on this show: no cursing.
No.
Now,
He wrote me beautiful
anybody
letters, and they're
that's
great letters. We fell in love.
that's right. First infraction, second infraction, $20 a piece. Now, when we get to the third infraction, as our friend Jam likes to say, that's the Kellyanne. So what that means is a public immediate praising of Trump that needs to go on all of the hosts' social media platforms, and it needs to stay up there for 24 hours.
Mm.
No taking it down, and the other hosts get to post uh, the Kellyanne, which is a praise of 45 to the utmost, to the highest.
Never, never.
You almost got it one time. One show you almost got one. You're lucky you got away with the quote thing. But
It got
Liz
that
is still in the
close.
lead though.
That's because y'all cheat. You guys are cheaters.
I had to update mine from last show on Sunday.
Cheater,
I gotta
cheater.
Oh, you got one?
yeah.
Oh,
I
I missed
got I
it.
got one. Yeah, I got a little excited. So
Well, it was a long show. It was a 2-hour show, so
it was a long one. It's definitely the
we're
longest show.
about to
All right.
Yeah, all right.
So let's ask the host a quick question so you can get to know them a little bit better. And actually, this question comes from Michelle Earls.
Michelle, my Shelly Poo. Hey, girl.
Yeah, she hit us up online. So, what are your top 3 flavors of ice cream?
Oh, top 3 flavors of ice cream.
Okay,
Sheridan goes first. I'm sorry, East goes first.
we'll let East go first.
Oh, I would go with Heath Bar.
Heath Bar ice
Um,
cream?
yeah.
Okay.
Uh, 31 Flavors used to have this flavor called Daiquiri Ice,
Ooh.
and I would have to say Reese's.
Reese's. Okay.
Reese's flavored ice.
Lizzie.
Definitely butter pecan. Now, let me just I should have prefaced this by saying I'm diabetic. I no longer eat ice cream. I can't tell. I probably haven't had ice cream in a decade.
Mm.
But back when I was being a bad diabetic and I was still eating ice cream, butter pecan, strawberry with a little bit of vanilla and lots of strawberry preserves on top. That you remember the McDonald's sundaes that you used to get, and they would just like pile on those strawberries.
Yes.
Used to love that. Um, and then I'm thinking probably a dulce de leche. Got to get back to my Dominican roots.
Uh,
The dulce de
Okay.
leche, yes.
All right.
okay.
I'm going with it's a specific brand, Edie's cookie dough ice cream. Yeah,
Okay.
East knows
I
all
could have
about
answered
that.
that one for you.
Yeah, so I was addicted to that for a little while, but yeah, and I guess my other two are probably Reese's and I'm gonna go with cookies and cream. So those are mine.
Hey Neil, just say what you want to say.
What?
Edie's cookie dough, Edie's cookie dough,
That's pretty much
and
what I
Edie's
want
cookie
to
dough.
say.
It's okay.
Let's see. Rob says Reese flavored anything is always the correct answer, and Ernest says give Ben and Jerry some love.
Okay. Yeah, that's true. That's true. They've been representing.
All
They've
right.
been representing.
They have been. They have been. All right. Let's do some shout outs real quick. Anybody got any shout outs? What you got, Liz? East?
So this is my first week of school teaching with the school of the New York Times, and I know because they're high school students, I can't encourage them to watch, but I still want to give a shout out to my students. We're at the halfway point this week, and so far it has been an amazing week of learning and instruction and interacting with these youth. So shout out to the school of the New York Times.
All right. East, you got anything?
All right. I always like to give a shout out to the Sunday host, since definitely I can't be there. So shout out to B Girl.
Oh, yeah.
I know
B-Girl
she
was
held,
great.
she held it down.
Oh, man. She
She
killed
is
it.
Yeah,
great.
she held it
covered
down
for you.
last week. So and I'm looking
Yes,
forward to
much
working with her
love.
one of these times.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. I got some shout outs. I got a shout out for Nola. I hope you're watching. I hope you're able to get on tonight. And we got some live from Nevada. And I want to thank everyone who was on my page, gave me inputs on these topics tonight. I used a lot of them, so we'll see how they go. All right?
Well, and Michelle Earls just said she wants to try the boozy flavor. So
The
next
boozy.
time we see each other, girl, yes, boozy flavor. Yes.
There you go. All right. So tonight, how our show works, each host comes with a hot topic they want to discuss, with several hot topics they want to discuss, mostly based on the discussions they had with you online about what you want to talk about. One of our hosts will start us off, tell us what's going on, then ask a question, and then we jump in and just let the conversation flow from there. Once time is up, you guys will hear this. All right, and that'll let you know it's time to move on to the next host. And that host will talk about whatever they want. And remember, your comments and questions do help drive the conversation, so comment away. We'll call them out. All right, so today I think I'll start off with East. What you got, East?
All right. Here to talk about actually a local story that went national. Here in the area where I live, there was a cyclist that was not having anything to do with Black Lives Matter. Man named,
Pull it up.
Anthony Bernard Brennan the third.
Oh, that Bama.
Bicycling on the
Okay.
trail. Yeah, biking on the trail. Should have been minding his business. Came across 3 young people posting messages related to George Floyd, Black Lives Matter, police just committed a lynching. And instead of just riding by on his bike, head down, not pay attention, if it bothers you so much, he instead confronted these 3 young people, and their ages are 2 19-year-old women and 1 18-year-old man. Confronted them,
You ready for the video?
physically assaulted them, and yes,
All right.
I mean, this guy is angry.
And what's frustrating about this is that he pulled up to young women. He pulled up to young ladies.
Hey,
I mean, that's the man that he chased down.
Yeah.
What is wrong
I
with
mean, he
people?
physically confronted these people for flyers. Now, there was a search for him for a little while, and he eventually turned himself in. He was arrested on 3 counts of misdemeanor simple assault, and he was released actually this past Saturday. I was reading that he actually has 2 adult children, 1 daughter, 1 son, and they say this supposedly doesn't represent who their father is.
What?
Really?
Who does it represent? Who
Yeah,
else
I was about to say, I
represent?
beg to differ.
Yeah,
That
I heard
represents who
otherwise.
your daddy is.
It's
I
clearly
hate
who he
to,
is.
yeah, I hate to break it to their children, but that's who your daddy is. Sometimes you got to see who your father for who he really is. You know that.
We hate to have to be the ones to introduce you to your daddy, but that is who
His
it
daddy, their daddy introduced him to himself.
Yeah, I mean, and not the fact that he attacked women who were probably his daughter's age, and with no regard for anything, their physical well-being. It's crazy to me. Liz, your
No,
thoughts?
I wholeheartedly agree. And I say this not meaning that if he had approached a group of young men in the same fashion, that it would be okay. But particularly because this is a grown man who is preying on, who is being so violent and angry and aggressive to 2 young women and an additional young man who were doing that. They were minding their business. They did not approach him, they did not engage him or anything. The fact that you will rush a young woman like that is insane and appalling. And especially since now East just informed us that he has a daughter at home. How would he feel if a man approached his daughter like that? So yeah, I was shocked to see it. And we all sit back and we see things like this, and we're just like, "Well, I would have beat his ass." But literally, ooh, ooh, ooh. But literally, I
Check
was
yourself.
sitting at
I'm proud of you.
That's right. I'm glad you caught yourself.
Right.
I
literally
almost missed it.
sitting at home.
I was
I
going
was
with the
like,
conversation.
I told him to
$60.
put a
Whew.
jumped on his back
Some
and just been
organization.
like pounded him like, oh, like why are people like this? Why that's just so frustrating to me.
Yeah. I don't know. I personally don't get it. I just want to point out. So Mel Blaine said his attorney said he's been having a hard time lately in his life. She said, "Poor him, not acceptable." Ernest Cooper
You
says,
know, I've been having a hard time. I haven't left my apartment in almost 3 months. Like,
he says who Ernest Cooper says he was who we thought he was.
mhm.
Um, Alice Hung says he hid his biking clothes and threw away his biking shirt.
Yep.
So clearly he knew he did something wrong. But yeah,
So
I have
Neil,
it.
let me guess.
Good.
I was about to say, so
No,
he had it hard, but he was biking through Bethesda in the middle of the day. Okay, but he has it
through
hard.
the
All right.
Right.
Okay.
mean
Oh,
streets of Bethesda. Through the mean streets of Bethesda. Yeah.
the
Now,
hard
Okay.
streets of Bethesda.
Lizzie
Yeah,
made a
we
good
got.
point. She said, what if he has a daughter? What if somebody attacked his daughter that way? I have a question. What if a black man attacked his daughter that way?
Oh, there you go, bruh. There you go, Neo.
So, I mean,
There
he
you
would
go.
have been it would have been
It would have
totally
been
different.
called. It would have been beat down. It would have been another national news
These would have been
story,
all
like
over the place.
Uh-huh.
all over the
Oh yeah.
all
They
over
would
the
have been looking for that brother all through the streets of Bethesda.
man.
All right, Lizzie, you're up next. What you got?
So we are back up to Colin Kaepernick.
Oh,
So I first started teaching at the CUNY School of Graduate School of Journalism back in 2017. So this was a little bit a year after Colin Kaepernick first started his protest. But I told my students then, this story is not going to go away. This story has a shelf life that's going to last forever and ever and ever. So now we're in 2020, 4 years removed, and we're still talking about Colin Kaepernick. We're still talking about his protest, and it has taken on so many different angles and faces and facets. So now where we are is the NFL has decided, under the umbrella of all of the backlash and response to George Floyd's murder, and how that looks in the face of Colin Kaepernick's initial protests about police brutality, about how we are unfairly treated by law enforcement, and how he decided to protest that with taking a knee during the national anthem in football games, and the NFL wasn't having it. Now the NFL has decided they want to. Roger Goodell decided he wanted to apologize. They believe in Black Lives Matter. They believe in our push for equality, and he apologized for not supporting any of the athletes who were protesting. But he never once mentioned Colin Kaepernick's name, right?
Right.
So in the light of that, a lot of people were saying, that the NFL owes Colin Kaepernick an apology. The NFL should sign him now. That would be the best remedy for the situation. That would placate everyone. And there's been some pushback with that. People are saying, no, he shouldn't play. It would be, a slap in the face. He should be above that. He should move on. And I've always steadfastly maintained that I don't think people are really taking into account the athlete mentality. Athletes are obsessed with their talent. They're obsessed with their profession. They have spent numerous years preparing for their moment on the field. So we got word this week that from Colin Kaepernick's agent that he is reportedly still determined to play in the NFL. He still wants to play. So his agent has reached out to all 32 NFL teams to see if there's a taker. And I know East has floated around the idea of Colin Kaepernick coming back to the league, who he would play for, what team would sign him. I'm putting it to my gents. Do you think Colin Kaepernick will be on the field if the NFL season starts on time in 2020?
I'll start because I know East, you probably have a lot to say about it. So I'll start. I don't really know. I really think teams are scared to bring him on. I think, because right now, especially with so much going on, so much the protesting and the anger, and potentially it could be a rallying cry, but from the other end, it could lead to even more violence and more hate. Certainly more hateful speech from the other side. So
I agree. I agree with that.
It could be difficult either way. I mean, like I say, I'm sure a lot of the community and a lot of people will rally around Kaepernick and any team that brings him on. But you still have a polarizing group of people. So, East, what do you think?
East?
I would definitely say he's going to be in somebody's training camp. And I think that depending on whatever team he goes to in terms of the training camp, I think that will strongly determine whether or not he's in uniform on opening day. Because we discussed it a couple weeks ago. He's still better off the street.
Right.
No prep. He's better. I would dare say he's better than 60% of the quarterbacks in the league.
How long has he been gone?
4 years.
His last game at the end of the 2016 season.
So how do we know he's as good as other quarterbacks off the street?
I mean, have you looked at a lot of these other quarterbacks?
I mean, yes, I have, unfortunately, and they're pretty bad.
No, go ahead, Lizzie.
I was just going to say, again, we're talking about not a Super Bowl winning, but a quarterback who took his team to the Super Bowl.
That's true.
I mean, this
People
isn't a
forget
guy
that.
who was a scrub, who had no talent, who was a forever backup. He, took over for Alex Smith in San Francisco. Alex Smith, who is now on the Washington team's roster. So we're not talking about the Anacostia. We're not talking about, just like some, player who's been playing, scrub ball, Pop Warner football still on the weekends. Like, he has a legitimate resume with the NFL. And I think a lot of things went into, in addition to his protest, because he was having contract negotiation issues with the 49ers before any of this, took shape. But it boggles the brain that it has gone on for this long.
Yeah.
However, let me say this, and I know he wants to come back. Like, I've never thought that he didn't want to come back. He's never wavered in that desire. But I think, as much as a lot of people want him to come back and think that it would be the right thing to do, and I do think the NFL has had conversations about it, talked about it, or whatever, I think the worst case scenario for them is if he comes back and is successful.
That's true.
That makes them look like the biggest a-holes on the planet.
I mean, they are. They still look like that.
But they still hide all of that. But for all of the fans who've been pro NFL and he's a scrub, he's this, he's not any good, if he comes back and takes a team, not even to the Super Bowl, but even to the playoffs, that will silence a lot of people out here. Yeah. And it makes the NFL look like the gumps that they are.
Yeah.
I mean, he was. People are going to point to the record he had his last year. I believe he was 1-10 as a starting quarterback. But that was a really bad 49ers team, number one. But they should also look at I believe his touchdown to interception ratio was 16-4. Jameis Winston threw 30 interceptions last year. And he's on the NFL roster. Come on, man.
At least people realize Jameis sucks. So.
Yeah. And Jameis has a problematic history himself. Like, we're not talking about an angel with Jameis. Is it Jameis or Jameis? I can't even remember now because he's so irrelevant.
Crab leg.
But, yeah, crab leg. That's how we know him.
Crab leg.
But yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how this plays out.
Yeah.
Because everyone now is calling. I think one of the mistakes that the NFL made was even giving that apology.
Yeah.
Because now people are going to call your bluff and be like, okay, so, put up or shut up. Put up or shut up.
Call out Morris Little says Cap has transcended the NFL. He has a much bigger platform from which to share the message. So, but he wants to come back. So we'll see. All right. Let's move on to the next one. All right. So let me close that out. For my first topic, I'm going to be talking defunding the police. This is becoming a huge catchphrase. At first glance, you think defunding the police means no more police at all, right? But that's not the intent. Defunding the police does not necessarily mean getting rid of the police altogether. All right, so I want to play this clip so you kind of get a feel for, what it means or what the problem is, all right?
Is above challenging. It is. We're asking cops to do too much in this country. We are. We're just asking us to do too much. Every societal failure, we put it off on the cops to solve. Not enough mental health funding. Let the cop handle it. Not enough drug addiction funding. Let's give it to the cops. Here in Dallas, we got a loose dog problem. Let's have the cops chase loose dogs. Schools fail. Give it to the cops. 70% of the African community is being raised by single women. Let's give it to the cops to solve that as well. That's too much to ask.
Yeah, I didn't get that.
Policing was never meant to solve all those problems.
So that is former Dallas police chief shortly after the shooting of 5 Dallas police officers after the protests for the murders of Philandro Castile and Alton Sterling. So, he's right. The police are tasked and they're asked to do too much. So the term defund the police would mean reducing police budgets and reallocating those funds to crucial and often neglected areas like education, public health, housing, and youth services. It's about investing in communities as a better deterrent to crime by directly addressing societal problems like poverty and mental illness and homelessness. And, police are simply not equipped to handle that. Yet, but that's what they're tasked with. So my question to you guys, should we defund the police? And what should that look like? I'll start with East.
You know, when you use that terminology and you give the explanation, it makes perfect sense. I think if I'm thinking about it from a political aspect, especially with the November election coming up, my concern is that the Republicans do an excellent job of pigeonholing the Democrats into a position that they they don't they don't want to take, but they've been pigeonholed into. Like, the Republicans can say, well, defund the police. You don't want any. You want the Wild Wild West, and the Republicans can play into their base's fear, and they could actually maybe expand their base to increase the chances of winning the presidential election in the fall, in November.
Because of the confusion of what defund the
Right,
police actually means versus having to explain
yeah,
it.
right, and that was my second point. Like, not many people are going to get to the point where you're like, okay, defund the police. Neil, could you explain that to me?
Mm-hmm.
They're going to say defund the police. Oh, you talking about remove money, and then I got to defend my property. I don't want that. I'm voting for Trump again.
Right.
That's my concern with this whole
Defund the police.
movement. Yeah.
Okay. Lizzie?
I think it's important to point out that, one, we have various programs in this country, whether it be educational programs, whether it be community service programs, that have been defunded.
Mm-hmm.
Doesn't mean that they have been eradicated.
Mm-hmm.
It means that they have been defunded. This is not a new term when it comes to politics, when it comes to community issues. But more importantly, the idea that defund the police means to disband the police, means to dismantle the police, that is an ideology, those are terms that were first set forth, put out in the public sphere by the police unions, by the conservatives, to scare people, to make people think, okay, they want to defund the police. They're calling for shutting down police departments and neighborhoods completely. And that's not what it means.
Right.
I had so many conversations this week with people about the actual term.
About defund.
And my first inclination is to be like, okay, well, if you're confused about it, you can't say you're against it if you don't know what it means, if you don't know what the movement is talking about. Right. So why don't you be proactive and educate yourself about what the movement is calling for? Yes, it's calling for not putting so much money into police departments, especially in Washington, D.C., where the mayor has just approved, I think it's a $19 million increase of funds for the police department. We're talking about reallocating those funds to other areas, one, so that the police departments aren't burdened with all of these additional activities, aside from serving and protecting the community, but also so these programs in the community can be, this money can be assigned to those programs. Mental health, recreation for our youth, education, healthcare, the elderly in these communities. These are things that have not been tended to for years. And so I think a lot of people are on both sides, aren't really coming together and paying attention to what this actually means.
East makes a really good point about, and I agree with him, that Republicans and Fox News do a great job at spinning. So you hear defund the police, and if you look at the supporters of Donald Trump, most of them tend to not be highly educated. So it's easy to spin defund the police because it sounds like you're not giving the police any money. But I just want to show one thing real quick. We actually showed this video on Sunday of this gentleman who is clearly in mental distress, having an issue. They're trying to get him into the ambulance, and this police officer basically assaults him. He's not breaking any laws, not performing any crime, but then he's attacked by the police officer for no apparent reason, just because he's walking around and refusing to get into the ambulance. He actually agreed to get into the ambulance. But he's clearly in mental distress, right? So what if we reduce the funding for police and instead call someone like a mental health professional or a mental health policing unit, a completely different aspect? We're not calling the police, we're calling a mental health professional to come on. I mean, East, you do this for a living, right? So you deal in the mental health profession, and I've seen your badge, so I know you have a badge. So, not saying you would go out and do that, but there could be a unit designed for that. Or there could be a unit designed to help with overdoses or drug addiction and things like that. And you're just reallocating funds where someone who is trained to deal with this situation can deal with it, as opposed to this police officer who is just a-hole. I wanted to say the word. So, what do you think?
Can I jump in here before East?
Go ahead.
Because I think that it should be noted that if you go from the video from the beginning to the end, the initial police officers on the scene and the EMT people that were on the scene for this particular incident, they did treat this guy with dignity.
Mm-hmm.
They were talking him down. They were calm. They were trying to de-escalate. They even said to him, I'm here to help you, brother. What do you need? It was this one police officer who came in at the very end, right when they almost had him in the ambulance.
He agreed to go on.
He just came from nowhere and decided, okay, I'm going to be robo-MFer, and I'm just going to end this right now. And so in addition to training or having different social services come in and try to help de-escalate the situation, I think we also need to better train these cops to de-escalate themselves. Like, take it down a couple of notches. Not everything is a I'm in fear of for my life situation. You don't have to point and shoot at every single scenario. And I think this is a perfect example of where you had good police officers who were trying to do the right thing, and then you had one bad apple that spoiled the entire situation, the entire bunch.
Yeah. Peace.
I want to say a couple of things. First of all, even after George Floyd, this guy tased him and proceeded to put his knee on the back of his neck.
Yeah.
So it's like you have no awareness of what's going on. And secondly, I think it's Arlington County in Virginia that did have that unit that Neil was talking about in terms of officers specially trained in mental health situations.
Okay.
To de-escalate and calm individuals down in order to get those people to the right treatment.
Right.
Because I think one thing that the former Dallas police chief was alluding to is police want to handle traditional police matters like safety. They want to get the real quote unquote criminals off the street. The murderers, the rapists, the thieves. They're not social service. They're not supposed to be social services, and that's where policing has gone.
Right.
I know. I think in Los Angeles County, they were training social workers to ride with or be in the police department, and then when they got like domestic calls or things of that nature that required more of a social service intervention, then those social workers would go with the police to those situations to help de-escalate the situation, so that if nobody needed to be arrested, they could get the proper treatment or the services they needed to resolve the situation.
Right.
My question to you, and I'm just asking what your opinion is of this idea that I have in my head, is that most police departments, definitely most SWAT teams, um, have a hostage negotiator,
Hmm.
someone who is there specifically to talk someone down off the edge. Not only a hostage negotiator, but someone who tends to negotiate someone who is maybe attempting to commit suicide,
Hmm.
maybe attempting to jump off a bridge or something like that.
Hmm.
Why don't we have the same emphasis for other potential criminals or suspects who might be in some type of mental distress,
Yeah.
some type of peril?
Yeah.
And I think that's what the public is asking. Like, we don't expect officers to be angels. We don't expect them to be omniscient, omnipresent, or anything like that. But in certain areas, you do account for this. So why can't we, spend more money to account for it in these other areas?
I just think it's time to re-envision the um, the police force, re-envision policing altogether. Now, Liz, I'm gonna come right back to you because I know you have a related topic. So let's go
So
over that.
related topic to this, early last week, in Lafayette Square downtown, right in view of our great president in the White House, um, the mayor of Washington D.C., Muriel Bowser, she had in the plaza there, she had a mural painted that said Black Lives Matter. Shortly after that, and everyone, was happy, was hyped, but then you started to hear like the comments about, oh, this isn't enough, defund the police. And so shortly after that, some local activists came in and they added to the mural. They painted defund the police. And so that's been the common conversation in Washington, D.C. over the past few days about defunding the police, like Neo alluded to. So on Tuesday, the DC City Council voted unanimously in favor of emergency legislation on police reform. So that means a measure that limits police use of force, puts discipline in the hands of management, and changes policies on body worn cameras. So my question to you is this a good start to defunding the police in the DMV, well, specifically in Washington, D.C.? Or do you think it's not enough? Do you think it's more? And I have a subsequent question to that. But first, let's put that question on the table.
There's a few places I can't remember. I saw an article about it where they're actually just redoing. Was it someplace in New Jersey, I believe? They,
Camden, New
Camden.
Jersey.
yeah, Camden,
Camden, New
Camden.
Jersey.
Camden, New Jersey, where they just started from scratch. Um, you know, I think that may be something that's required, and they say their policing has gotten better. They're not having as many violence, brutality complaints. So I don't know. I think a lot of these police forces just need to be, torn down and rebuilt. That's what I think.
East?
I mean, I would say that it's in terms of reforming the police or defunding the police. I don't. I didn't see where they're if from what I know about defunding, it's a reallocation of funds towards programs to assist with like social services or things of that nature. And from what I see, it's more of a reform. And I know it's semantics. We're splitting hairs,
Sure.
but it seems like it's more of police reform, um, kind of tightening up police protocols to reduce the likelihood of or the appearance of any malfeasance that the officers might try to take part in on the streets. Um, I never understood the whole body cam situation where um, when there's an officer involved shooting, miraculously the body cam was not engaged.
Right.
I don't
Yeah, that's
understand that.
consistent.
So,
I mean, all of a sudden it turns off, right?
right. So, I mean,
It's ridiculous.
anything that to make it personal, anything to keep my behind from getting beat just because I'm a black man walking down the street, I'm in favor of. So if this is the start of it, I'm happy. But they need to go. I think somebody wrote in on the street, not good enough. It's not. I think we got to take it several steps further.
Back up.
What do you think? What is your opinion of? So, of course, once this came out, and this wasn't the mayor, this was the city council that did an emergency police bill reform, and it only lasts for 90 days
Oh, really?
because
I
it
didn't
does.
know that. Okay.
It only lasts for 90 days because there is due process,
Okay.
and so after the 90 days, then it has to go through another process, and it still has to be voted on, essentially.
Okay.
Um, but what do you think about the pushback from the police departments about reform?
Oh.
And I'm not even talking about the language that we're using, the semantics that we're using with defund the police. I'm talking about the specific pushback about reform, about changing policies.
It's the police unions, right? The police unions are fighting back and claiming that that the Black Lives Matter is, improper, or that we're not doing the right things. But I don't know. I think those people see that their jobs are in jeopardy, as they should be, and they're just fighting back, especially the police unions. But I mean, they sound racist when they're saying all these things. I don't know. What do you think, East?
I mean, you touched on it. And I think anytime you can try to get older professionals to change
Yeah.
how they've been doing anything for 15, 20 years, or when you're trying to change a culture of how things have been going for many decades, you're going to get pushback. Um, but I think the officers coming up now and in the next 5 or 10 years, um, those are the ones. Like this reform is for those officers, because I think those officers, they want to do the policing. They don't want to do the social work. They don't want to do the social services. They don't want to have to deal with overdoses in the street, or unruly kids. I mean, these are social issues, and I would think that it might take a generation of police officers to kind of cycle through before you see real change in the culture of policing. I think, like Neil said, I think their first trepidation is jobs. Um, but to me, you shouldn't have to worry about your job if you're doing what you're supposed
Right
to do.
there. Right.
If you're doing job, can I just add
Go ahead.
one more thing before we go? I think that all of the pushback that comes between police unions and police officers and people who in the community who are asking for change, I don't think I've ever seen a group of people who are so resistant to change, even though they demand change from everyone else in the community,
Absolutely.
everyone else to do better, everyone else to act better, and not resort to criminal tactics. But I don't think I've ever seen a group in this country that believes that they are so above and beyond reproach, that they're so untouchable, that how dare we ask for them to change the way they've been doing something. And I think that's what grates on most people's nerves, is that there's no compromise. There seems to be no compromise with a lot of these police unions. It's like, how dare you? We are in your community, and if it wasn't for us, then your community would be. And so you have no right to ask us to change our policies, and I just don't understand that logic,
Yeah.
because everyone else is held accountable when we do wrong.
Yeah.
But they feel as if, no, you can't touch us, you can't critique us, nothing. We just have carte blanche to be the mafia, and that's it.
Yeah, the police unions have been protecting cops for years, especially the bad ones. I just want to read some comments online. Alice Hung says it makes sense if people are willing to listen and understand what defunding police means. Also, she says in Montgomery County, Maryland police have 27 weeks of training and they need to address everything. Ernest Cooper says de-escalation is greater than escalation. All right, so East, you're up next.
All right, kind of change the topic a little bit. Still dealing with racism.
Racism.
I don't know how many fans we have of the television show on CW called The Flash. There was an actor by the name of Hartley Sawyer that had a recurring role on that program.
I watched The Flash.
All right, yeah. Yep. There it is.
A little boring lately, but it was a good show.
Once again,
I got that queued up for you, by the way.
The Twitter feed the old Twitter feed rears its ugly head. Hartley was fired for some misogynistic and racist tweets from 2014 to 2012. Now he's 35, so he wrote these when he was 27 and 29. So he wasn't a teenager. You know, sometimes when these people get caught, they say, "Well, I was young. I'm a different man now." You were 27, dude. Come on. Now, some of the tweets that he wrote were as follows. He wrote back in 2012, the only thing keeping me from doing mildly racist tweets is the knowledge that Al Sharpton would never stop complaining about me. And he wrote in 2012, as a lad, one of my favorite activities was kidnapping homeless women and cutting off their breasts. Dude,
okay, was that a joke?
What's going on?
Was it a joke though?
He's about to be investigative discovery. Monster American.
You tell on yourself.
Was it a joke? I mean, it sounds like it was a joke that he was trying to make. I mean, not a good one, obviously.
Okay. I'll play devil's advocate. If that's a joke, first of all, why type it?
Oh.
And secondly, it's not funny. Like
it wasn't funny.
I think with this current generation of folks, like there's no sense of self-awareness. There's no sense of what, and I'm not advocating to say that this is okay to say in private, but there are things that we say in private that we know we can't say in public.
Right.
And with the emergence of social media, people haven't really been paying attention to those.
Yeah, they blur the lines. You're right.
They blur the lines. They go over the line. It's like, why would you say that publicly? Even sometimes when you say this to your friend in private, you might get popped upside the head. But why would you say that publicly? Like, what did he say about the breasts again? Like, I'm just like.
He said, let me quote it again. Just as a lad, one of my favorite activities was kidnapping homeless women and cutting off their breasts. So what he's saying is,
I think that had to be a joke.
Talking about last week. He ain't talking about a lad. He's talking about as of last week.
So as a lad, his favorite activities was committing a minimum of 3 felonies. Come on, we got to do better than this.
Well, I'll just say this: I won't miss him because I didn't like his character anyway. So. So I'm glad he's gone. I just want to point out another comment online, and this is a question actually. So Rob Bertrand asks, how big a role does American gun culture play in officers overreacting to situations? Does that danger vary from state to state? East?
I don't know if it's so much of a gun culture as it is just a mentality of I'm the police, I'm the authority, I'm I'm the bad behind on the street. This is my block. What did uh training day?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I knew you were gonna say that.
Yeah, we talked about.
Y'all just live here. I'll run this. So I think you have that mentality on the street. And I think you also have a certain segment of the police that were bullied in high school or in middle school, and they're taking it out on everybody. They're like, I got my badge, um, and if you mess with me too much, I do have my gun, but I have my badge, so I can pull you over. I can do what I want to do. So I
I
think it's
agree.
more, yeah.
I agree, and I think that, and I don't mean to downplay how racism plays a role in this, but I do think in certain situations it's an underlying role. What's in the forefront is these are people that have been waiting for this moment.
Hmm.
Doesn't matter if you're black, white, male, they've been waiting for this power trip
Yep.
to be able to take over someone and exert all of their energy and anger onto that person. In terms of the question that was posed, I do think it plays a role. But however, if you look at some of the footage of the protests, the interactions between police and protesters over the past week, a lot of the police officers who were overly aggressive were not using guns. They were using batons. They were beating people down with batons. And so I think it's just a complete power trip.
Yep.
I have a badge.
Hmm.
I have some type of weapon, whether it is a baton, whether it's a gun,
Yep.
or what have you. And I am going to exert my power and my force over you to dehumanize you and to get you into submission.
I agree with that. And I know that Rob lives in Canada, and the policing system's a bit different there. Um, but yeah, no, there's no question that it really comes down to personalities. I know that I was reading that I think it was the number 3 job for psychopaths was a police officer. So it just tells you the type of people that we're hiring for those positions. All right, so we're supposed to move on. We're running over. All right, so I'm going to take the next one. You guys ready? All right. I'm going to be talking about our friend Billy Porter. So, what?
Oh,
What?
all right, I got you.
All right.
I got you.
All right, so for those that don't know Billy Porter, he's an actor, singer, probably best known for his Tony for Kinky Boots. Most recently, I saw him in Tiffany Haddish's movie Like a Boss, so he was pretty good in it. I like
You
Billy
watch
Porter.
Haddish movies?
Say what?
Mm. I said, you watch Tiffany
I
Haddish
do watch
movies?
Tiffany Haddish. I mean, she's getting a little old now.
Oh,
I mean, not old in age, but her comedy's getting old. All right,
oh,
it is. I mean, they're a little bored with it, but Billy is very outspoken about LGBTQ rights. And
we'll get back
Monday,
to Tiffany Haddish.
yeah. Oh, we are okay. Monday he said
To
this.
go even deeper. And
You
black
better
people
wait.
hear me. Because y'all ain't going to like this one. As a black queer man in America, my basic human rights have been up for legislation every single day that I have had breath in my body from all sides. And by that, I mean that the black community's relationship with the LGBTQ plus community is appalling at best and eerily similar to that of white supremacists versus black folk. Hear me, black people, and hear me well. I'm calling y'all out right here and right now. You cannot expect our demands of equality to be met with any real legislative policy and change when y'all turn around and inflict the same kind of
That's his
hate
phone.
and oppression on us.
Apparently, he was getting a call right in the middle of his. his All right, so my question to you guys is, and it's twofold, okay? Um, is this the right time and place for this conversation? Does it detract from the current conversation we have going on? And the second part of the question is, and it's more important actually, does his message, which is very important, he makes a good point, right? Does it get lost in the conversation by bringing it up now? So I'll start with Liz.
I think he is 100% correct. I think you can't be Black Lives Matter if you're not talking about all Black lives. And I think that's the message that he's trying to put out there. In the backdrop or behind the scenes of what we've seen with George Floyd and with a lot of the other Black men who have been taken down by police officers is what we do to Black homosexuals, particularly Black homosexual men or Black transsexuals in our community. They are not treated well, they are abused. There has been a rash of Black homosexual transsexuals. I'm sorry, there's been a rash of Black transsexuals that have been murdered in Texas over the past 6 months to a year that no one seems to care about. And the first thing that comes up here about offense or crimes against the LGBT community or transsexuals in general is, well, that's their lifestyle. What do they expect? And so I don't think it's the wrong one. I don't think he was, one, he didn't personalize it. He didn't say, this is Billy Porter. People are, coming out against Billy Porter. He was adding on to the conversation of how we are oppressed in this country. And some of that oppression is self-inflicted oppression. And it's one of those things that we don't want to acknowledge within our community at all. So I applaud him for speaking up. And even, I think even though he said this, really, was anyone listening?
That's
Is
part of,
anyone,
that was part of my second question.
but would they have even been listening outside if George Floyd had not been murdered 2 weeks ago and he made the same message? Would people have been listening? No. No.
Are they listening now? Are they kind of?
So when you ask the question, is now the time? I'm just like, when is the time? I mean, if he said it outside of what happened, outside of the current civil unrest, people still wouldn't be listening. So when is the time? You would assume or you would hope that Black Lives Matter would acknowledge this and assign this to a part of their movement and say, hey, this matters too. And this doesn't take away from anything that has happened with the young Black men that we're talking about, that have been murdered on television in the public sphere by law enforcement. But at the same time, this is also something that's happening in our community that we appear to let go by the wayside and not care about.
Before I let East talk, I'm gonna just read a comment from Ernest Cooper. He said, "We can't tell a marginalized group when and where to protest." All right, East.
I was talking to someone earlier this week, and I kind of equated to, when you have company over
Mm-hmm.
and you have to excuse company to have a family discussion.
Mm-hmm.
Like, white people, y'all are great. Thank y'all for coming out to protest, but we need to have a conversation internally as African Americans within our community about some stuff that it has been going on for too long. And a part of that is how the LGBTQ plus community is treated still within our community. Like things have been happening to that community within our culture since we were young, and I would have thought it would have abated as we got older, and they're still murdering transgender prostitutes in on Eastern Avenue and on the Maryland D.C. line. Um, and the worst part about it is, I think people do it because they think that nobody cares about these people. Like, it's just, we're just gonna throw them away like garbage, and that's awful to think about. But we have to have an internal conversation. I think definitely brings up a strong argument. I do agree with Lizzie that I think it's kind of gonna fall on deaf ears right now, but you got to start it now, so that when he comes back to it, and I don't know Billy Porter, but I get the feeling we gonna come back to it, and he's gonna say, "All right, y'all, since we let's get back to what I was saying back in 2020 about how we treat uh, gay and lesbian and all these people within our community. This has to be resolved at a certain point." And protest is supposed to make you uncomfortable.
All right.
So there's no comfortable point to discuss it.
Let me just say this: like a lot of people are just starting to know or be exposed to Billy Porter
I've known
because
Billy Porter a while.
But a lot of people, in our community or even nationwide outside of the Black community are just starting to, realize who this guy is.
Mm-hmm.
And it's because of not only his acting, his talents with acting, but also because of his red carpet appearances, especially within the last 6 months to a year. I mean, he's worn fabulous ensembles on the red carpet. But who has been the loudest, the most vocal about the dresses he shows up in on the red carpet? It's been us. It's
But
been
positively, right? I haven't heard any.
no,
I've heard
no,
positive stuff. Well, I'm listening to the wrong people, obviously, because all I've heard
no.
is great stuff.
I think. Well, I've seen some good stuff, but I've seen, and usually the issue comes. Unfortunately, usually the issue comes with fellow Black males. I've seen a lot of people who've been pissed off that, this Black man has the nerve to walk down the red carpet with a dress on, not only a dress, but a couture dress on, with his head held high. It's rubbed a lot of, it's rankled a lot of feathers.
I don't know
And
why I've seen positive stuff about him exclusively, in my opinion. That's what I've seen.
I've seen a lot of, I've seen some, I'm not going to say I haven't seen anything positive, but I've seen a lot of negative stuff as well. And so I think that speaks to what East was saying, is that this is a conversation that we should have had decades ago.
Right.
And we still keep pushing to the side.
All right, before we close this out, I want to share this because this was my initial feelings on what he said. You might have changed my mind a little bit, though, I have to admit. But here we go. I want you to listen to this. And this video came from Alice Hung.
Do we know what time and place is? You know what time and place is. There's an opportune and a right time to say things and a place to say things in order for it to be effective.
A little bit
right?
profanity.
I've been reading a lot of comments, specifically from my Asian
You
American
get
brothers and
assigned
sisters
those.
saying shit like this. Well, David, there's Asian plight too. There's a lot of stuff that we go through as well. Okay, who the fuck said that we don't go through shit as well? See, here's the problem. A lot of the times, you guys think that when you go through something, or when somebody else goes through something, it takes away from your pain. Like, hey, look at the shit that I'm going through. They're going through stuff, but I'm also going through stuff. Who the fuck said you weren't? Who the fuck said you weren't? But time and fucking place. Now is not the time nor the place to bring it up, as the country is burning. As these people are fighting for their civil rights that haven't been given to them for hundreds of fucking years. See, time and fucking place. Their pain doesn't take away from yours, and nobody fucking said that it did.
Now, he was talking to
Hold on.
Asian Americans. I just want to say, this was not about Billy
Why
Porter.
didn't have
So
beeps? Why have the beeps?
what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. Go ahead. You want to say something?
No, I understand what he says when a lot of people deflect, when they do a lot of
and it happens a lot.
However, Billy Porter is a part of the community that we're talking about. That's the difference here. This is a Black man talking about, in addition to what you have seen on television, this is also happening to Black men.
But he's talking about a different community. Let's be real. I mean, he's part of the Black community, but he is talking about issues with a different community.
It's the same type of violence, though. It's the same community. And there are police officers that are involved in that type of violence.
Oh, no question.
So it's the same conversation.
But do you
So
think it's
I
white
think
supremacy? It's equivalent to white supremacy?
what?
The plight of LGBTQ men from black men.
Do I think as black folks we think we are superior? Heterosexual black folks, do I think we think we are superior to homosexual or transgender or bi black people or people in general? In general, absolutely, I think we think that.
Okay.
I think religion has a lot to do with it. I think um, selfishness has a lot to do with it. I think conceit has a lot to do. I think ignorance has a lot to do with it. But it's a deep rooted hatred.
All right,
So
we got to get on
superior.
to the next one.
All right.
Yeah, I'm surprised at that too. I mean, but all right. So let's move on to East.
All right. Georgia. Good old Georgia.
Ernest Cooper,
Um,
your new state, Ernest Cooper.
uh, Georgia had a quote unquote catastrophic issue when it came to voting, but it seemed to only occur in certain areas of the state. Mostly,
Which area? Which areas,
uh,
East? Which areas?
mostly Fulton County, Cobb County. If people don't know where Fulton County is, that's Atlanta,
Okay.
where a lot of African Americans reside. Uh, the issue, part of the issue was that Georgia decided to go to a whole new uh, electronic voting system, uh, and they weren't prepared. Um, and once again, I'll say it, they weren't prepared in the predominantly black and brown communities.
Imagine that.
People reportedly were waiting in line for 3, 4, 5 hours to vote, and it
I
was
heard up to
frustrating. It was
6 hours.
hot. It started raining. It was horrible. And the Secretary of State, Brad Ruffensperger, said that it was unacceptable and that they're going to open up an investigation into the election, and they're trying to fix it in advance of the November general election. Um, I mean, this is predictable. Stacey Abrams talked about this in 2018 when she ran for governor. In advance of that election, Brian Kemp, who was not only running for governor, but the Secretary of State, therefore he was controlling the election, he kicked off 500,000 voters prior to the gubernatorial election. Um, this is kind of like the Republican playbook. If you can't win fairly, steal it.
So
Lizzie,
It's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. My question is, and someone should pose this to um, the leader of the political system, the polling system in Georgia. Why aren't you guys thinking about the big picture? Why aren't you guys laying out on a map, in an outline, the worst case scenarios? Oh, we know why. Because there's a specific group that you don't want to vote. There's a specific group that you want to disenfranchise. So I don't think these are mistakes. These are things that, oh, we're sorry. No, these are very specific things that are happening as it relates to voting. Like if these were predominantly Republican areas, if these were predominantly white areas, we wouldn't have these problems. And again, like I don't mind standing in line voting. I once told a friend in New York City, because she didn't want to vote because she didn't want to stand on the line. And this was years ago. Probably, I don't even remember what year, but this was years ago. Probably the last Obama election. And she didn't want to stand online, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, Heffa, we just stood online for 3 hours for a Jimmy Choo sample sale, and you can't stand in line to vote?
Jimmy.
What is this saying? Like, where do you come from with this logic?
So
Um, But it speaks to also the idea that this is the reason why a lot of the GOP and a lot of the Republicans don't want the mail in ballots. Because with the mail in ballots, they don't have that much control to keep people from voting.
Right.
Whereas this way,
Because they know there's going to be 6-hour lines.
exactly,
I mean, if we look at Maryland, but the thing is, how do we know that these were engineered? Do we really feel that these were engineered? Because in Maryland, we had the primaries, and people were standing in line for 2 to 3 hours as well. And it was in various different areas, mostly highly populated areas, because a lot of people, I was hearing that people who were running the polling stations couldn't get the volunteers because they were scared to come out because of COVID-19. So are we 100% certain? And I'm not trying to say that there's not a problem, because clearly there is a problem. But are we certain that this was some type of engineering as opposed to a problem due to the times that we're in right now?
yes, because they didn't account for it. They didn't plan for it. And it's
Intentional.
not
You're saying that's intentional.
I think that's intentional. They didn't plan for it. And it's not like these things weren't happening before COVID-19.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not to this degree, maybe not to this extent. Um, but they didn't plan for it. I mean, it was the same down here. I don't think it was this bad,
No, not
but
6 hours, but I'd had people that I know that were in lines for almost 3 hours trying to vote in Maryland.
and like I said, we were in line in New York for 3 hours in like, what,
That was
2008,
Obama.
2012. And I mean, I just, I had my iPhone. I was fine. Okay, we standing, whatever.
East, you had something?
But to your point, like reportedly in Georgia, with these new machines, the pollsters who did show up were not trained
Right.
properly. So you had a minimum amount of
Workers.
electronic poll voting machines.
Mm-hmm.
You had people who were either ill-equipped or unprepared to assist voters as they use these machines. And to everybody's point, considering COVID-19, with physical distancing, there was only so many people that could be allowed into these polling stations to cut down the number of polling centers. I spoke to a college friend from Georgia. He said that he early voted last week. He didn't have any problems. And I think one thing that we might have to do as a show or just as a community, highly encourage early voting.
And mail-in voting. So don't forget, I've seen these stupid posts about people saying, I stand in line, we don't mail. Those are from the right wing. Those are from the people that don't want you to vote. Mail-in voting is a good thing. Spread the word. Everybody needs to vote.
So I did a post about that maybe a couple of weeks ago because I saw that very same meme.
So annoying.
And it's such a false narrative. It's so annoying, and it's just not true.
Right.
One, how do you think the military in this country, the people who are a part of our armed services, who cannot be physically in the United States to vote, and there are thousands, tens of thousands, how do you think they vote? Mail-in ballot.
That's what our president did.
That's what the president has done if he's voting. He and most of his staff are mailing in their votes. The very first time I voted in 1992, I did an absentee mail-in ballot because I wasn't here. This is not a new thing.
Yep.
The Republicans want you to think that this is a new thing, and it's not. It's something that's not good. It's not trustworthy. But it's been going on for years. There are states, there are cities that the majority of their citizens do a mail-in ballot.
Yep.
This is nothing new.
All right. Lizzie.
Okay. So we're going to lighten up the conversation for this evening. When I say lighten up, it's kind of a twofold statement because we are talking about COVID-19. So I had a conversation with my students the other day about how most of the people who have been diagnosed with COVID-19 coronavirus aren't in the hospital. Most of the people who have the virus are recuperating at home, outside of the scope of the doctor, outside of everyday medicine. And so one of my students talked about an article that she read about home remedies for COVID 19, not only to cure COVID 19, but home remedies to prevent you from getting COVID 19.
Okay.
And so that had me thinking, like,
So
okay,
chloroquine.
even beyond, honestly, even beyond that. And it had me thinking about, our history, especially our history as persons of color, as Black people, how we tend to sometimes prefer holistic medicine versus traditional medicine. My mom is from the South. My mom is from Florence, South Carolina. And so I grew up with every type of home remedy, root, voodoo, whatever. I grew up with a lot of stuff, most of which I rejected,
Voodoo
by the
works.
way. Yeah. Voodoo, Santeria, I reject all of that stuff. But I did some research a little bit this week, and I found that a lot of people, especially mostly a lot of elderly people, a lot of older people who are set in their ways and they are used to rejecting doctors, one, because they don't trust doctors, two, because they don't necessarily have insurance, they don't have money to pay for doctors, to pay for medicine. So that they're at home, they're cooking up all of these concoctions in their living rooms, in their kitchens, by their bedside. So let me just go over and then I'm going to throw it to you guys, whether or not you would use some of these things.
All right, let's
If
go.
you trust some of these things. So the first COVID remedy, hot beet juice, ginger, and Epsom salt. And you have to
drink it?
You drink it.
I mean, I'd try it. Ginger, I know ginger is very effective. I would never definitely use ginger for some stuff. I'd even use garlic. Helps the immune system.
Can I hear the other options before?
Beetroot has lots of antioxidants.
So the second one, okay, so let me just preface this for the second one. So growing up, again, my mom's from the South, and she believed in all kinds of oils.
Mm-hmm.
And so two of her favorite oils growing up were castor oil and cod liver oil.
Mm-hmm.
Now, castor oil has a little bit of sweetness
Definitely
to it.
southern.
Castor oil has a little bit of sweetness to it, so I didn't mind that as much.
Mm-hmm.
But cod liver oil tastes like death on fire. It is absolutely disgusting.
I wouldn't know having that either.
And so that was even beyond Robitussin. A lot of times, a lot of us grew up with your family, with your parents or your guardians saying, "Ooh, you got to get that Tussin, got to get that Robitussin." In our house, it was Tussin and castor oil. So it was a lot of grief,
Sounds
so the
wonderful.
second remedy is, I'm sorry, Tussin and cod liver oil. So cod liver oil, oregano, and you're drinking this. Cod liver oil, oregano, and a heating pad.
You drinking the heating pad? No.
Black folks love
You
a
put
heating
it. Oh
pad.
yeah, I've seen that remedy. I won't say where I've seen that remedy, but I've seen that remedy.
Black folks love a heating pad.
Give me the hot beet juice.
Hot
If those
beet
are my
juice.
two options, I'm definitely taking the beet juice with the ginger.
I have one more.
All right.
One more option.
All right.
I see Mel says I drink my ginger tea every day.
But does she drink it with hot beet juice and Epsom salt?
I don't know about all that. And Mike Winter says take some ginger ale, some cod liver oil, and take a nap.
No, I won't do that.
Go ahead. What you got? What's the last one?
Greasing your throat with lard or Vicks Vapor Rub. So one or the other, lard or Vicks Vapor
So you
Rub
put it on your throat, in your throat.
on your throat, and then wrapping your neck with wet, dirty socks and sleeping for 12 to 24 hours.
Wait, so on the
So
outside
lard-
of your neck.
Yes. So lard or Vicks Vapor Rub, and then wet, dirty socks
Why does it have
wrapped
to be
around your
dirty?
neck. That's
Yeah, why does that be dirty?
that's what the recipe says.
What's the value of the dirty socks? Why can't it just be a sock?
Does it have to be
Not,
outside dirt or inside dirt?
I mean,
Or
street
dirty's
dirt.
dirty?
Dirty dirt. Dirty, dirty. Dirty, dirty.
Mel says she
Um,
adds turmeric to her ginger tea, by the way.
I actually now I take a lot of turmeric because it helps with your liver, and some of us consume alcohol on the daily, so we need as much help as we can get for our liver. So I take a lot of turmeric.
Ooh, I would do yimmies. Asha root, apple cider vinegar, and cayenne pepper, ginger, and garlic. Those all sound great.
That doesn't sound bad. That doesn't sound
I
bad.
would do that.
But again, let's talk about the dirty socks, which I will.
No, I can't do it.
Yeah.
Like
I mean, I'd
my
do it if I had
grandmother.
an idea that it might actually work, but that doesn't even make sense.
Now my grandmother, she was from the South. Uh, her home remedy always involved corn liquor.
Yes,
So
Sheridan, speak on
The
it.
hell is corn?
so I know she was walking this earth today. She was probably say to knock that Rona out,
That wrong.
Yes,
get you
some
some
cone
corn
liquor.
liquor,
Cone liquor. Yes, yes.
and maybe a mint too, just to kind of give you a little flavor right there.
How is it that every Southern mother, grandmother, auntie had a bag full of peppermints somewhere?
Yeah, right by the chair, right there, just right there.
Right there. In her purse, in her bag, in the drawer, on the side.
Mike Winter says Jameson cures everything, and Mel says I heard that works. Laugh out loud.
Again, there's some alcoholics in the audience, so maybe they need to hear it as well.
All right, so we gotta get moving. We're running over time. This is the last topic for the hot topics. All right, and we got your boy from Facebook.
Oh, that's your boy,
No,
your guy.
no, I'm done with him. I'm absolutely done with him. Now, this topic comes from Liana Jones. As most of you heard, the Twitter CEO started fact checking the president, censoring things he says that go against the terms of their use. But of course, Zuckerberg decided to publicly condemn Twitter and then say that he would not fact check or censor any of the president's messages, no matter how hateful or vile or untrue. But the problem is that Zuckerberg is censoring everyone else, including us, by the way. I just want to point out.
Including us.
Yes, I just want to point out, I tried to post this from the other day, from our last show, and they actually said I couldn't do it. They blocked me. It's
I mean,
wonderful.
okay. I mean, I kind of understand why they blocked you.
But they said it had nudity in it. It's no nudity in this thing.
I'm kind
I
of
got it
glad.
out there anyway, so I don't care. It's not really him, by the way. It's an art project. So.
Honestly, I think he's probably much worse. I think that's a fair representation.
Anonymous claim that they put that out, but that's not anonymous. That's an art project that somebody was working on. So, but the point is, they're censoring everyone but Trump for some reason. So advertisers are running all the hills from Facebook, and I mean, I'd love to get away from Facebook, to be honest with you, but it's our main platform right now, and so we're trying to get it out to the people. But what could fill Facebook's gap? Any ideas? Any suggestions? How can we fill the gap of Facebook? Replace Facebook? Who could step in? What do you think? Is Twitter enough?
No, I hate
No,
Twitter.
I can't do Twitter either. I'd love to,
I mean-
but Twitter's just not my thing.
I was thinking about that. My thing was, I was thinking about if Biden wins, will he take on Facebook and some of these big behemoth organizations, Google or whoever, like the government did with Ma Bell back in the 80s? Will they just say, hey, look, y'all are too big. You're too big. You're a monopoly. No one can compete with you. You have to break it. You have to break up. She was Melrose. I mean, to me, that's
Black Planet.
Black Planet. Yeah, Black Planet.
They're both still out there.
What is Black
Yeah.
Planet? I don't know what that is.
It was like the Black MySpace.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, like I mean, but in my mind, I can't think of anything right now that can supplant Facebook or even as a viable option.
Yeah, the biggest thing that Facebook offers is all of their privacy settings. That's the biggest thing. That's the biggest draw for me. And there's no one out there that competes with that very well for me. So that's my answer. All right, we're all done. So let's move on to some Insecure. Close out our show with a little fun. All right. Now we missed last week's Insecure conversation, so I'm gonna play both promos. We'll start with Low Key Happy.
Yo, how was the block party, by the way?
It was dope. It almost killed me, but I did that shit. But you said you had to talk to me about something?
Yeah.
What is it?
Lawrence and Issa, by the way.
Hate her mouth.
You hate her mouth. All right, and this is last week's.
You
this
sure I
week's
can't
episode.
get anything started for you?
I'm okay. I'm waiting for someone. A friend. Well, we used to be friends. We kind of still are. Maybe. Hopefully. She might hate me.
Can I get you some alcohol, sis?
Yes.
Issa was out of line.
I mean, obviously, I am on your side. I just know you miss her.
The only person I miss is
Her
Latoya.
boyfriend.
Okay? Because we are about to be best friends. Hey, girl. I was wondering if we could meet up and talk. Hey! So sorry. That was so loud. Hey.
All right, so spoiler alerts ahead, everyone. Now, between the two episodes, we see Issa and Lawrence get back together. Now, for those that don't know, earlier in the show, Issa and Lawrence were a couple, but Issa cheated on Lawrence. And of course, Lawrence was out of there. I would have been out of there. But throughout the show, we've seen a few relationships for both Issa and Lawrence, and it didn't go so well. They both seemed that they just wanted to be happy, and they came back together last week. So Lawrence asked her at some point why she cheated. Now, the answer was a bit typical to me. Things were bad. The other guy made me feel wanted. So is that an acceptable reason to cheat? And should he be risking getting back with her? I'll start with East. Go ahead.
That's not acceptable. I mean, just a short answer. I mean, but that's easy to answer at my age. When you're in your I think in the show they're in their late 20s, early 30s.
That's true.
It's probably
Culture.
yeah. I mean, I think it's an acceptable answer at that age. It's not. I would figure leave and do what you want to do.
Yeah, that's my.
No reason to hurt anybody. Just hey, look, it's not working.
Yeah, I wouldn't accept that answer.
Why can't you verbalize that? Like, the immediate jump, okay, you don't feel wanted. The immediate jump is to go
Right.
and have a relationship with someone else. Why can't you just express that to your partner that you love and live with? Because she and Lawrence were living together.
Right.
I don't feel wanted. Like, there's something going on with this.
Yeah, and she didn't do that.
And the sex scene between her, what was the guy's name that she cheated with?
I forget his name.
It was so primal that I'm just like, yeah, there's a little bit more going on with that.
It was a little lusty.
Yeah, it was a lot. It was a lot.
Now this past week we saw Issa all in with Lawrence, right? And
Right.
but she had made a commitment with her ex Nathan to help him move. Now, Nathan had ghosted her earlier in the season. Now, later we find out that it was because he was bipolar and had to deal with his issues. We found out he's bipolar. Now, the first question I have is if she's trying to rebuild trust with Lawrence, should she be messing around with Nathan at all, given her history of cheating and stuff like that? Now, the other question comes from D. Can you love a partner with mental illness, like being bipolar? Well, let's start with the first question. Should she even be messing with Nathan?
No. Is she Nathan's only family friend? He has nobody else in his life that can help him move.
No, matter of fact, Molly's boyfriend was one of his best friends.
Well, then that's on Nathan. That's not on me. Like,
East?
No.
As I was watching, I'm like, this is the only, like, she was the only one helping him unpack.
Yeah.
Like, really?
I saw that too. Like, that was a question.
And I'm watching this like, this is like a setup. Like, I mean, of course, she said something like, she acknowledged that she is trying to rekindle whatever with Lawrence.
Yeah.
But
up front.
I'm like, why even go? Like, it's like, why set yourself up?
Right.
Like,
at least.
Because you know what? I think it's an innate quality to want to have a backup, even though we're not probably aware of it. But yeah, I'm trying to rekindle this thing with Lawrence, but I'm not going to really push Nate to the side
I can see that,
yet.
actually. I can see that. Now, the other question about could you love a partner with mental illness like bipolar? That's from D.
Yeah. I mean, if you, I mean, from a clinical standpoint, it's a health issue.
Mm-hmm.
So just like you should be able to love somebody with hypertension or any type of disease, it stands to reason that you should be able to love somebody with a mental illness. You gotta have your eyes wide open though.
Oh, by the way, Issa cheated with Daniel. Mel let us know.
Daniel, yes. Thank you, Daniel.
Lizzie, bipolar?
Yeah.
I mean, I think you can love someone who has some type of mental illness, but can I be with that person is the question. And I mean, I can't be with certain people who don't have mental illnesses. So which is why I'm single. But it just depends on the situation and the scenario and how that mental illness manifests and is a part of our relationship. Like if you have someone who is mentally ill and they're not even trying to take their meds and take care of themselves,
so
then no.
You messing with Kanye? Okay.
Kanye is beyond mental illness. That's some old coonery. No. And Kanye either. Kanye don't want this smoke.
Being honest, I could love someone that has mental illness like bipolar, for example, but I would struggle in a relationship with someone like that, I believe.
Yeah, it's tough. And I don't think there's a problem with you saying it could be tough.
Yeah.
I don't think there's a problem with that at all.
I don't think so either. All right, and the last question. Now we see Issa really trying to rebuild her relationship with Molly, but Molly seems kind of resistant, right? And she shares that with her boyfriend, and during an impromptu house party, Molly accidentally sends a text intended for her boyfriend Andrew to Issa, and that text said, "See, I'm trying with her," or something similar to that. But,
Nah.
Yeah, Issa was out. She's like, okay, this is, she decides to leave, and while she's waiting for her lift, Molly comes out and trying to talk to her, and they have a conversation. But it ends with Molly saying, maybe who you are now and who I am now just don't fit anymore. And Issa says with tears in her eyes, okay. Then Molly replied, okay, as though she was expecting something more. So my question is, what in the hell was she expecting Issa to say? I just want to know, what was she expecting Issa to say when she says that?
I think she was probably expecting an attempt to at least fight for it. not to immediately acknowledge it.
Okay.
And that's not to say that they're going to come back and have like this beautiful, friendship again and run off into paradise. But I think people expect you to fight for them at least a little bit in the beginning.
But then Molly wasn't fighting for Issa. That's the thing that bothers me. Molly was just not fighting at all. But their relationship, and I think part of what's playing out is their relationship is very similar to a boyfriend-girlfriend relationship. As best friends. And, I don't know. I don't know what she was looking for. What do you think, Issa?
I mean, first of all, I wish Jam was on the show.
I do too, actually.
Because he would crush Molly.
I ain't enough.
No. Not definitely, Lizzie. You're more than enough. But just Jam has this.
He has a disdain
Jam
for
goes
Molly.
all in on Molly.
He what?
And
he hates Molly.
Jam goes all in on Molly.
Okay.
Yeah. He can't stand how she's treating
Issa.
In terms of friendship.
Maybe you should be on this show because I don't really like Issa. So yeah, maybe that would have been a good backing for it.
Yeah. But yeah, like you said, I think Molly expected the back and forth, and she didn't get it.
Yeah, Mel says she wanted her to beg. Yeah,
Probably.
I don't think Issa should have been begging for that.
I think this is a good insight for people, even for Black women or non-Black women in general, about how difficult our relationships can be.
Yep.
The ups and downs, the highs and lows, how intimate our relationships can be without us even knowing it.
Right.
And how we get so hurt. Like, I think you mentioned it can be like an actual relationship.
Mm-hmm.
Like, your girl is probably closer to you at times than even your man.
Yeah.
And so when that breaks down, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah.
It's
and you could tell Issa was heartbroken. So, all right. So that's it. That's it for Insecure. That's it for our show, actually, guys. So we're going to do some last-minute shout-outs. Any shout-outs you guys have for anybody online? I think we saw Mel was very out there. We had Mike Winter.
Oh, my gosh. And hopefully he's still watching. Today is Mike Winter's birthday.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Happy birthday, Mike.
Years old day. Whoop, whoop, whoop. So happy birthday to my bestie. You drive me nuts every single moment of my life, but I love you with all of my heart. So happy birthday.
All right. So that's it for our show. I'd like to thank everyone for joining us. We hope you had a great time. Don't forget, like us, follow us, subscribe at TLS Live Show and www.tlslive.show. We love seeing all the great discussions going on the Facebook page. Now, we'll see you Sunday, 4 p.m. Z will be here, going deeper on white allies and discussing cancel culture. So that should be a fun. Now, we didn't have a game tonight, so I'm going to close it out a little bit differently. And yep, you know what's coming. You know what's coming. Here we go.
Are you detaining me? You about to lose your job. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job because you are detaining me for nothing. You about to lose your job. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job. I'm Martinez. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job because you are detaining me for nothing. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job. Get this dance. You about to lose your job because you are detaining me Because you ain't got no reason.
Yes, yes.
Perfect.
That's how we close out the show.
Protest anthem, y'all. That's the 2020 protest anthem.
All right, guys. Don't forget, we'll see you Sunday. Have a great one. See you next time.
Have a great one. Be safe. Be safe,
Love you
everyone.
guys.